Zoom audience?
Yes, my friend.
We're live. We're live? Mm-hmm. We're live. Oh, and you can't go past here.
All right, well, welcome everybody. It's Think Real Estate's first time buyer event. I'm very excited.
Woo!
I hope you guys are. Looks like we've got some experience in the room, but is anybody a first time buyer here that is here? Okay, terrific.
Nice.
By the way, the rest of us were all first time buyers at one time, so we've all been there. My name's Jordin Newman. I'm a partner in Think, along with our first speaker, Paul Haley. And what we're going to do today, you've got actually three speakers that are going to cover a broad range of information. And all three people deal with first-time buyers and those issues in the trenches every single day. So what we're going to attempt to do for you today is we're going to present a bunch of information from a general overview of what's happening in the marketplace to what's happening, how to get a mortgage, any mortgage questions you may have, to the actual process of how to go through first-time buying. And we've got, each speaker is going to cover a specific area about that. So you're going to get lots of information, but most importantly, we've got three professionals who are here to answer your questions. And I think, being a first-time buyer myself about 20 or so years ago, the big thing is questions, because we have so many questions, and it has to do with our fears, and particularly fear of the unknown. Should I get into the market? Should I buy a condo? Did I wait too long? Should I wait longer? Are interest rates going up? Are they going down? It was the biggest thing that stopped me from buying. I should have bought, we all say the same thing, but I should have bought 10 years earlier, no question. That was our conversation earlier. What stopped me? A lot of those questions. So what we're really here today, I think, to do for you is to conquer that fear, particularly the fear of the unknown. And we're going to start with Paul Haley, our first speaker. He's going to talk about the general market conditions, what's happening out there. Paul's a speaker, an author. He's also a real estate agent, a broker, who's dealing with these issues on a daily basis. So Paul's going to give you an overall sense of what's happening in the market. Next we have Ruth Akierman. Ruth is our wonderful real estate broker who will handle all of your mortgage needs, who's going to answer any questions you have to do with mortgages. And I found myself, and personally in working with first-time buyers, probably the most questions come around the financing. The programs, what do I qualify for, there's so much unknown or fear around the mortgage issue. Ruth's going to answer any of your questions that you might have about that. And finally, we have Carolyn Dyer, who is going to talk to you about the process. And Carolyn is our in-house first-time buyer specialist, and she deals with first-time buyers every single day. So she's going to be a terrific person to ask about, all the questions that you may have as it regards to that. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up my partner,
Thanks, Jordin.
speaker, neighbor, friend, Paul Haley, to give you a background on what's
Cheers.
happening.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks, everyone. Are we good to go? So I really like this quote. Don't buy real estate. Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait. Like Jordin said, all of us in this room have been first-time buyers while you guys are going through the process right now. And, truthfully, it's a bit daunting, right? It kind of feels like I always felt like they had that sword of Damocles hanging over my head. And at the time, honestly, it was like not that big of a mortgage, like compared to kind of what you guys are facing. It was like a few $100,000, but it felt like a lot of money, right? And now I'm like waiting in mortgages. So I'll talk about that in a minute. And I think it's interesting because we do these first-time buyers events, and I'll sort of get into some of the numbers around the market and pre-construction and that kind of stuff. But I was thinking we're probably not going to do first-time buyers events in 5 to 10 years in this neighborhood, right? Because it's not going to be affordable, right? Or the condos will be teeny tiny, and we'll talk about the trends happening there, right? So when people are like, should I save and wait? I'm like, no. Now's the time, right? And like Jordin said, listen, I was a first-time buyer too, right? And I actually this helped me think about it. So I'm a self-proclaimed math nerd. I actually have a math and engineering degree. So I did a lot of complicated analysis when I was in your shoes. If you want that, it's like kind of a long, boring discussion, but happy to help you with that. But I did some analysis, and it really said, if you get in the property market, and if the property market, that has any sort of decent appreciation, you're going to do well. And truthfully, when I bought, I don't know about you, Jordin, but like I bought 2005, I think, for the first time. And I thought the market was at its peak, honestly, right? And then I bought a rental property. I bought this house and a rental property. I thought the market was at a peak. And I'll show you what's happened ever since then. But are things falling back there? Sorry about that. This is my house, actually. This is my house. We're doing a big reno right now, so we ripped off the roof. It's actually just kind of a cool event space. We just did one where we talked about buying and renovating, which is probably going to be some of y'all's next steps. So back to, I just like to talk a little bit about what I like to call the property ladder. And so what this is, basically, you just get in the property ladder, and then once you're in the property ladder, it allows you to move. It allows you to create motion, and then you can achieve the goals that you want to achieve. This is just a sample. These are my personal goals. And so I started out, I actually got into a condo with $13,000 back in the day, right? And now live for free in this house, and working on replacing my income. I have rental properties in the States and here. But truthfully, all that started with $13,000, right? So my net worth, we were just talking about this. Where's Ruth? Ruth and I were just talking about this. Like, my net worth is now in the millions, but that all started with $13,000, and I haven't really put any money in, right? It's kind of crazy. I want to swear a little bit, but true, right? So let's talk about any questions on the property ladder. Yeah, and so it's basically like you use the equity from the rung below to kind of help push you up to the next stage, and it's either you sell or work with Ruth and refinance to move to the next phase, right? And truthfully, for a lot of young folks, like replacing your income or living for free are pretty compelling things, right? So if that's something you're interested in, then we can have a conversation. We can talk about that because it's absolutely achievable. People say, oh, well, Toronto's too expensive. No, it's not. There's still ways to do it, right? So we can talk about that if you want to talk about that. But let's talk a little bit about, because, probably as a first-time buyers, one of the biggest things you're probably worried about is now the right time to get in the market? And I want to talk a little bit about that because it's very important, right? And Aurea just did a study, and they found that lots of people want to buy a house, right? Basically, if I have to summarize the numbers. But a lot of people feel like they can't afford to buy in the neighborhoods where they want to live, basically, right? That's what all the numbers are telling you, especially young people, you guys, right? And we're here to say that's actually possible. That's actually still possible. I don't know if it's going to be possible in 10 years. My guess is definitely not in 10 years, but probably in 5, it might not be either, right? So that's what we're here to talk about. So, yeah, you said you bought 20. So you bought, Jordin, 20 years ago, like way back here, when the average price in Toronto was like super low. And now, truthfully, if you look at inflation-adjusted market returns in real estate, it actually went up in 1989, and then kind of slowly dipped down for 7 years, and then it's basically been on this trajectory ever since. There was a little bump in 2008, and there was a little bump in 2017, but basically it's been doing this ever since 1996, right? And, interestingly, so CAGR is compound annual growth rate. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? So that's if you put money in the bank, you would have gotten 9.7% return each and every year, and it would have compounded every year, right? So I don't know what investment person can promise you almost 10% return. And the interesting thing is that's leverage, right? Ruth will talk a little bit about how much you can leverage, but you know, at little as 5%, right? So 95% you're going to be leveraged for almost 10% return, right? Any questions on the market? History? So let me just talk about like not just the numbers, but what's happening in this marketplace. You know, really Toronto. So it's really driven by the three things, right? Demand, supply, and interest rates, right? So demand, you guys know this will be over one day, and we're expected to have 200,000 new immigrants coming to the GTA. That's a lot of people. I don't know where they're all going to fit, and that's going to create a supply problem, right? Now, as an investor, because I've bought in other cities, and what you look for is places where you have population growth, where you have wage growth, and you have job growth, right? So in Toronto, we have all those three things. So that means Toronto is a great place to invest, right, in the long term. Now, supply. Now, interestingly, housing starts actually jumped last year, but the problem is that's an Ontario number. The GTA, the housing starts have remained flat and will remain flat for the next 10 years. We're going to build about 38,000 basically condos a year for the next 10 years, and that's not going to change. And part of that, it's a development problem. I'll get into cost per square foot, but we just can't build more properties in Toronto, and you can't build more houses, right? Like, if you look at housing supply, this is the supply of new houses in the core, right? We're not making any more houses, right? We're just making condos. So, and then low interest rates. So, Ruth can probably jump in about interest rates, but Bank of Canada has said that they're not going to raise the overnight rate until 2020. Now, overnight rates primarily affect the variable. Bond yields are up a little bit. Ruth has told me. So 5-year. So the fixed ones are more related to the bond market. So those are starting to see pressure coming up. I did talk to a friend in equity markets the other day, and because basically just so you know, rates are related to inflation rate, right? And inflation's high right now because we're having supply problems. The central bankers say that's short-term problems because of supply pockets and closures and that kind of stuff. Markets think maybe differently, but I can't tell you who's going to be right. But I think, at least structurally, we're not going to ever really probably see like a 5% interest rate, right? Like if you talk to your parents, or because what happened in 1989 is interest rates went up to 13%, right? And that's what partly caused the crash. The problem is, like, we went from currency was like a backed by gold, and now we're really a debt-backed currency, right? So we can't jack up the interest rates because the governments will go bankrupt. So I don't think we're ever going to see above 5% again. I could be wrong, but what do you think? Interest rates? Yeah. Inflation will take off again, but they'll also adjust the inflation calculations, right?
The only reason the rates go up is because people can afford it.
Yeah.
So good markets, rates go up, bad markets, they go down.
Yeah, but there's not much wiggle room as like there used to be, right? It's my opinion. And then so let's just talk quickly, because a lot of you are probably thinking about like the condo market, what's going to happen in the condo market. So it's interesting because the gap, so it's maybe a little hard to see on this, but the gap between condo prices and housing prices has increased over the last little while. And actually what we saw November last year was we saw a real dip in condo prices, and they've actually come back significantly, but they're going to come back, right? So I think what you'll see, because truthfully that's the last bastion of affordability now, right, is you're going to see the gap start to close. And interestingly, the opening price for condos, so that's dollars per square foot, is like skyrocketing, right? It dipped a little bit last year because, they kind of had to take pricing. So I have a good friend actually that's developing a big 6-building complex, and he figured his cost of construction are about $500 a square foot. His development charges and all that kind of stuff is another $300 a square foot, right? And this is in the 905, and that's not paying for the land or any of that kind of stuff, right? So you're already structurally probably close to $1,000 a square foot without having sold anything. So that's what's happening in Toronto. And it's why, developers, a lot of them want to build rental units now because the development charges are less and they get to keep the buildings, So let's talk about the rental market because, pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, vacancy rates were like 1%, right? Or a little below 1%. And then obviously things happened. People moved out of the city and they spiked. And now they're on their way back down. So I think the last was 6. That was Q1. I think Q2 were closer to 6 or almost in the 5s now. And, we've seen it as realtors. Like last year trying to get anything rented was pretty hard. And basement units were just sitting. But now, like, especially September, it was crazy to, like, lots of people out there wanting to rent. And it's interesting that the price per square foot per condo, because people that have bought a few years ago and then are closing in say 2024, just to break even, they're going to need rents to come up significantly, right? Because now they've paid an average of $130 or $1,300 a square foot, so they need to rent those condos at a significant premium in order to break even on their cash flows, right? And there are a number of purpose-built rentals under construction. I think, rightly or wrongly, those are the things where developers are really pushing for now. But, the thing to remember, as a renter is anything built after 2019 it isn't subject to rent control, so they can jack up the rent to market prices. So just as a caveat, and Carolyn will come and talk a little bit about that. Whoa, don't look. So any questions about the market before I hand it off to the illustrious Ruth? Oh, we got to get her wired up. So, I guess, one of the things people, come and get your mic. We'll get you mic'd up and I'll just talk about how awesome you are. So, one of the benefits of working with a mortgage broker versus a bank, particularly, we see it as realtors, it's a competitive market to buy real estate. And, you need someone in your corner, someone that's going to pick up the phone and talk to you when you need to, right? That's probably the biggest advantage is you can call Ruth and say, hey, I want to buy this place. What do you think, right?
And I'm available.
And you're available. Try to get a hold of your bank, right?
Yeah.
All right, wait. You technical difficulties standing by?
Oh, okay, we got the other mic on.
Oh, and you need the.
Alrighty.
You got it.
Am I in?
You're in.
Okay.
All right.
So, hello everybody. You keep inviting me back. Thank you so much, Paul. You must like me or something. Yeah. No, I love working with the Think team. And my name's Ruth Akierman. I'm a mortgage agent, and I'm going into my 15th year of being licensed in mortgages. I'm with a company called Outline Financial, and I love first-time home buyers. I love taking that time to explain and answer those questions. And, feel free to ask. There are no silly questions. I remember when I was a first-time home buyer as well. And, it's kind of a scary unknown place. So I think our jobs are to make that easy, comfortable, smooth. And when you're working with a team, you've got your real estate agent, you've got your mortgage broker, you've got your lawyer, and we're all working in the background to make that process smooth. It's supposed to be, the best time of your life. And you're making the biggest purchase, the most money, right? So what's a mortgage? basically your mortgage is just the dollars and cents, that the bank is going to lend you on the home that you're going to buy. So the collateral is the property, okay? And, I would consider myself the money lady, so I'm going to handle that part for you. And your trusted realtors are going to handle the collateral part for you, because that's just as important, right? You got to make sure you've got a good property so that the bank will feel really good about lending on it. And then there's you as a client. How do you guys look on paper? What's your credit scores, and how do we put that together for you, right? And when looking for a mortgage and when looking for a property, there's a couple things that we're going to talk about, and I'm going to make this as high level basic as possible, but let the questions come as they may. Deposit. So when we talk about deposit, it's going to be a combination of the money that you're going to put as a deposit when making an offer on a home, and you're going to have a down payment total, okay? So your deposit plus whatever's left in down payment is going to make up the money, and then whatever the bank's going to lend will make up your total purchase price, okay? When we talk about rates, we're going to sit and talk about variable rates. We're going to be talking about fixed rates, which Paul touched on. You're going to see in the media a lot about fixed versus variable, right? It's the biggest debate. It's been going on forever. Historically, variable is the way to go to pay the less interest to the bank, but you have to be able to stomach a little bit of movement in the market. And I'm a little bit of a math nerd myself, so I'll be able to show you what those numbers are going to look like with, let's say the market rises with prime 6 times in the next 5 years. How does that look for your fixed versus variable? And you get to decide, okay? Term. When we talk about the term of your mortgage, okay, we're talking about a 1 year, a 2 year, a 3 year, 5 year, 7 year, 10 year term, okay? And that's your commitment with the bank, the contract that you're going to write with them, okay? I would say that we mostly see a 5-year variable or a 5-year fixed. But we'll show you the other options. And I think when you are looking at, bank websites and in the newspapers, you're probably going to see rates based on a 5-year variable or a 5-year fixed, okay? But there are other terms out there available. And then amortization. Amortization is the length of time that you're going to borrow those funds out towards, okay? So 30-year, 25-year. Some people come to me and say, I want a 20-year or a 10-year. And if the qualification works, great. I'm going to show you all those numbers, and you get to decide. Okay? Any questions so far? Okay, so the term of your mortgage is kind of your contract of the mortgage. So if you take a 5-year term at, let's say, 2.09, you're going to be paying on 2.09 for the next 5 years. After 5 years is complete, you then renegotiate your term, okay? The amortization schedule is drawn out in total 25 to 30 years, okay? And of course, you can renegotiate within the term. You're breaking your commitment to the bank, and there's cost to that. And we can talk about the different penalties between breaking a fixed, breaking a variable, okay? Okay. How much do I need to save and how much can I afford? Okay, well, like Paul was saying, as little as $13,000, right? Theoretically, yes, you can buy with 5% down payment, okay? But the rule of thumb is 5% on the first $500,000 in property, okay? And 10% of the balance until you hit $1 million. And then you have to put 20% down payment minimum, okay? It's kind of unfair almost, it seems. If someone's buying at $999,999, that guy only has to put $75K in down payment minimum. As soon as you get to $1 million, 200 grand, okay? So maybe that will sway kind of where you're looking and how much down payment you do have. One of the biggest things I get from my new home buyers is I'm trying to save for 20% down payment. My parents told me I got to put 20% down payment. My neighbor told me I got to put 20% down payment. Okay. Beg, borrow, steal. Don't steal. Steal if you can. To get 20%, that's great, but let's think about this. If you've got 10% down payment today, okay, and you're trying to get into the market and you're trying to save and save and save to get that other 10%, that might take you another 16 months. Where is house prices going to be, okay? So when's the best time to buy? Well, it was yesterday. So as soon as you can get into the market, the better. And we'll help you and we'll show you the numbers, okay? I actually have some clients, they're new to Canada. Their goal was to save for down payment in 5 years, and they're buying a house now. I'm helping them right now, 3 years into being in Canada, so I'm super proud of them. And when I got their 90-day statements of their account activities, I can see $100, $50, $200. They've been saving, right? It is possible. It's not easy, but it is possible. And so their goal of buying a house in 5 years just got shortened to 3 years. So I'm super proud of them. And little by little, they saved and they have the down payment to purchase. So I don't know if you guys can see this clearly, but we're comparing $550,000 property, okay? And we've got a down payment on one side, which is 10% in down payment, and we've got the guy that's, you know, he's got 20% in down payment, right? You can see on the 10% side, there is a CMHC premium, so you're going to have an insurance premium. Don't be scared of that $15,000. I know it sounds like a lot of money, but let's really think about this. It's stretched over 25 years and built inside of your mortgage, right? So if you're trying to wait for this 20% down payment, where is that $550,000 condo going to be in 15 months from now, right? Okay, so great, you've got your 20% down payment. And Paul, how much is my property worth? Probably $575. So now you don't have your 25 or 20% down payment anymore. You're going to be paying more in land transfer tax. You know, your closing costs are going to go up. So when I show you the math of something like this, holding back money, there's nothing wrong with it. If you need some money to put in some new floors, great. Let's discuss what the numbers are actually going to look like, okay? So my guy on the left, he's got a $510,000 loan. My guy on the right's got a $440,000 loan. And you can see a little bit more expensive for a conventional mortgage, conventional being 20% down payment or more, okay? And a little bit less in price, 2.19 on the insured deal. You can also see that my insured guy, he can only amortize for 25 years maximum, okay? Once you get to 20% down payment, bank says, thank you very much. We're going to stretch this out to 30 years, okay? But watch those interest payments, okay? Every little penny that you can throw at your mortgage is going to go straight to principal. And, you know, most of my investors, we're going to try to take as much money as we can from the bank. We want to stretch it out for as long as possible. Why? Because we know that that property is going to increase in value, right? Sooner we can get into it, sooner we get our, you know, principal starts to be paid down. Maybe we've got some renters paying the mortgage, right? We know that that 550 is going to increase. We know that, okay? So at the end of the day, we can see the difference in monthly expenditures. It's about $600 a month, okay? And if those numbers work for you and if they're comfortable for you, fantastic. Get into the market as soon as you possibly can, because this might cost you more to wait. Okay? Does anyone have any questions? No. Scary slide, right? Okay, how do we qualify? So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how I qualify people. I usually get an intro email from my realtors. You know, I'll send an email out. We're going to have a 15 to 20 minute conversation together, and I'm going to ask you all kinds of questions. And at the end of that conversation, I'm going to say, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think is going to be pertinent to mortgage approval? Okay? Then what we're going to do is we're going to go through the application process. I'm going to ask for a bunch of documents. And you're going to see this big long list, and you're going to probably think, why do you need all this stuff? Well, trust me, I'm not going to ask for anything that I'm not going to need, that the bank is not going to need, okay? I want to forensically look at you as a client. I want to take apart every piece of income that you have, put it on paper, and I want to make sure that I've asked all the right questions. Do you have a car payment? Student loans? Did you co-sign for your brother, sister's, cousin's friend that I'm going to find out, right? So we'll run the credit. We'll look at your credit score. I'll, kind of get a high-level look at the package, and then we're going to have another call. We're going to sit down, and we're going to say, okay, the goals that we talked about, fantastic. This is what it's going to cost. This is what it's going to look like. This is how we can make any changes, right? And then I send you off to shop, because that's the fun part. I'm not the fun part. I'm the work, okay? But once that part is done, you're out there and you're shopping and everything's kind of, I would say, really good from there, right, Paul? So it's really important that you're very honest with me and give me all the information, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I want to help you, okay? I talk to people that buy in a week. I talk to people that buy in 2 years. I talk to people that come back after 5 or 6 or 10 years and purchase, okay? So don't be scared, because maybe we can talk about how you can save. Maybe we can talk about, I see you only have one line of credit. Maybe we should get another one, apply for another card. So don't be afraid. Call us. We're here to help and give you my 14 years of experience and get you guys on that property ladder. Any questions about the things that I need? Okay. So that's me. I guess some reasons why you would use a mortgage broker. I'm available. I think, I'm available. I'm available to take your call, because I guarantee you're probably going into offers at 8 o'clock on a Saturday. Okay, your bank's not open. I guarantee you that if there are 5 other offers on the property, I guarantee you there's going to be a conversation of, we need to get rid of this finance clause, okay? The bank is never going to let you go without a finance clause, okay? It's a decision that you're going to make, but I'm here to formulate those liabilities for you, to make that decision for yourself, okay? We usually run 1 credit check, okay? And we can go to all the different lenders. I deal with 30, but I would say that I have a top 6 that I deal with. And I will do your top A tiered lending, your alternate, I want to say B type lending. I can do private lending, and I can put you in touch to do commercial lending. So really there's not a lot that we can't do for you guys, but I think that it's just education, find out where you guys stand. And if it's not just you purchasing, maybe you pair up with somebody else. We're seeing a lot of co-ownership these days, which is great. I know Paul and I have done one together that was extremely successful, and we're starting to see that to be a trend. You've got 2 people that come together like-minded in real estate and can't do it what they want to do on their own, but they come together for another cause. So I think that's it for me. You do, yeah.
Talk about ownership. How does the mortgage work in that case? Is it the same mortgage for both, or is it different for each?
So that's a great question. So co-ownership will work exactly like if you had a couple, married couple. Husband and wife on the deal, they're both on the deal. Co-ownership is just person A and person B. Or co-ownership could be person A, B, and C, okay? So every client will bring to the table their income and their liabilities, okay? And whatever down payment it is, right? The bank does not care who's responsible at the end of the day. You're all equally and solely responsible for the mortgage, okay? The bank just wants you to pay that monthly bill, right? But on title, you guys can decide with your lawyers to change the percentage of ownership on title. So your title is going to be separate than your mortgage. So you're really treated as an individual. And in co-ownership, you know, we have to be very careful with privacy. And, you know, we work within whatever the comfort levels of the clients are, right? Because it's about credit score, it's about income, it's about those sort of things. And trust me, you can do a co-ownership partnership on a mortgage, and the two parties really have almost no clue of the particulars. It doesn't need to be shared, right? At the end of the day, if it works within the ratios, if the down payment works, the liabilities work, then we can get the deal done for you. Yeah.
Ruth, well, maybe, I'm not sure if everybody understands this, but I didn't understand it when I was a first-time buyer. And that is, to me, one of the biggest benefits of working with you is that when I first had my first mortgages, I went to my bank. They were my bank for whatever years, and you know, I went to them. I did one mortgage, and then I got smart. I thought I got really smart. I went, you know what? I'm going to compare. I'm going to go to another bank and get their rates, and I'm going to go to another, because I'm really smart, right? And what would happen is I'd go to my bank, Scotia, and then I'd fill out all their paperwork, and then I'd go to Royal, and I'd fill out all their paperwork, and then I'd go to Meridian, and I'd fill out all their paperwork, and it was just like, it was a full-time job.
I was going to say, who's got time for that these days,
Like,
right?
It was insane. And I
Right.
because I didn't even know what you guys did. This is a long time ago. But honestly, one of the biggest benefits of working with a mortgage agent like Ruth is that you do one set of paperwork, and she's going to find you the best deal at whatever bank. Because the way the banks work is, Scotia might have a great deal tomorrow, and then the next day, because of the way their books are, they're like bookies. You know, how their book is, they don't have a great deal tomorrow, but Royal does. Or Meridian does today, but they don't tomorrow. So when you're going, Ruth's going to take your information and shop it around to whatever the best deal is for you. And I never understood that. And to me, as an agent, when we tell people to use you, or a mortgage agent, a lot of it is to do with, it's a lot easier for everybody.
No,
You know?
it's totally true.
And I never got that as I was,
And
maybe other
every
people don't.
credit hit is going to take a couple points off your bureau. And, you know, if you have one credit check or two, okay, you're okay. But if you've got 6, you know, you're buying a car, you're looking for an apartment to rent, you're working with this bank, that mortgage broker, etc. A bunch of hits to your credit bureau, not only does it bring down your score, but guess what? It's on your credit bureau forever, right? And the bank that ends up with your deal on their desk one day, they're like, why is your client going to this bank, this bank, this bank, this bank, this bank, right? And it just, you know, we kind of have to ask and answer questions at that point, right? So it's not something that's favorable. I know it seems like a good idea at the time, but, you know, we're definitely here to get you the best rate and the best product, okay? Because sometimes the best rate is not the best product for you, okay?
Can you explain that? I was gonna ask that question. Like, is the best rate, the lowest rate always the best rate?
No, no.
Yeah,
So, you know, you got to read the fine print, okay? I'll give you an example. Bona fide sale clause, okay? What does that mean? It means that you're entering into a mortgage agreement with the bank and you're buying this house, and a bona fide sale clause says the only way out of that 5-year term, let's call it a 5-year term, is to sell the house or die, essentially, right? There's kind of no way out. You do get a slightly better rate, but you'll have a massive penalty if trying to actually break that type of mortgage. And the reality is in Ontario or in Canada, most people break a mortgage within 36 to 48 months. I know it sounds crazy, right? Especially my realtor clients, because they're always looking at properties, you know, and I'm going to get that phone call in 36 months. Ruth, I want to refinance my house. Paul was talking about that, right? Refinance my house. Well, the penalty to break a variable rate mortgage is 3 months interest, okay? Whatever that number happens to be. amount of mortgage, interest, 3 months interest, okay? Times that number by 5, that's about what you're going to pay to get out of a fixed. And it could be $2,000 in penalty. It could be $40,000 in penalty. And if you're someone that's looking to refinance to go buy your next property on the property ladder, right, a $2,000 penalty, you can stomach that a little bit more if you're going to get $100,000, $150,000 out of your property, right? $40,000, that's kind of eating into the profit. So I don't like bona fide sale clauses. I really don't like to do them. I've done very, very, very minimal in my career because in today's world, nothing's guaranteed. And I know you guys are all going to tell me I'm going to stay in my property for the next 5 years. I know you're going to tell me I'm going to stay in my property for the next 5 years. I guarantee you, you're going to call me in 48 months because you see all the pretty things that you want, right? So we don't know what the world is going to be tomorrow. We don't know where your job is going to be, right? You might want to hightail over to, I was going to say Australia, but maybe not Australia. And you may have to sell your home, right? Penalties in mortgages for fixed rates, atrocious, very, very high. And so when we're talking about fixed versus variable, I want to give you all that information. I'm going to put it in an email, right? So that you guys have it there. So when you call me in 48 months and we're talking about, Ruth, why did you make me take this fixed rate mortgage, right? I'm going to do my best to steer you in a direction that's going to work for you or you, right? Every client's going to have their own story. It's not a one box fit all.
I think that's really important from the realtor side of it, because what we're trying to do is we're asking you, where do you want to be in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, particularly if you're an investor client. So a lot of times you want to take out some of that equity, or you want to change your mortgage situation. If you're locked in on a mortgage, you might have that flexibility. So if your long-term plan is to get another property or to upgrade or what have you, you need to be able to have that flexibility. So it's really important conversations that you're having depending upon what your 1, 2, 3 or 5 year goals are all about.
Yeah.
If in a co-ownership kind of scenario, is it better to register a company and invest? Like if our a long-term aim is to have multiple properties and invest in real estate, is it a better scenario to create a company and invest through that?
A holding company.
Yeah, honestly, it's kind of, there's no right answer to that. I think that's very much an accounting question, very much of what your personal goals are, who your co-ownership is with, right? Sometimes the answer is yes, it is easier, and like long-term, it'll be better for you because you don't have the property under your personal name, you know personal liabilities and things like that. But maybe your long-term goals don't require a holdco, right? And keeping it in your personal name is going to work for you. So it's a tax question, it's an accounting question.
You typically pay a higher rate too.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes. And the accounting, I mean, you're setting up a corporation, right? So you're paying to set up a corporation. You're paying an accountant to do your financials for you annually. So it has to make sense at the end of the day. I'm sure an accountant can easily give you the if this, then that. But, there's kind of no straightforward answer to that one. Is that okay?
Also depends on how many properties you intend to buy over your life goal. Like, what is your goal? Do you want to have 5 or 6 doors? Do you want to have 80 doors? Because that will gravely adjust as well, because how many banks usually allow 5?
We get to 5 properties, and then, we start kind of getting a little bit into other types of lending, okay? But I have clients that have 13 properties, 15 properties, 70 properties. Trust me, if you're 70 properties and you're walking into the bank with a bunch of paperwork, they're going to cry. They're going to run. We're not going to run. I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Anybody else? Did I answer your question okay? Okay.
So you can have like 15, 20 mortgages or?
Sure.
Yeah?
Sure.
Yes, I love this.
You can. I know that one of the talks that Paul and I did previously, it's not easy, right? This process is not easy. It's not for everybody, but it's easy. It's easy.
It's easy if you have the right people on your side.
You just need the information. You know, you just need the information because there's so much information out there that's false, right? You can read and read and read and read stuff to death, but stick with the professionals. Do what's going to work for you, because what's going to work for you is not going to work for you, right? And so I'm here to tailor everything specific for you, the client, and specific for you, the co-ownership client, right? And privacy is important, so it's very important to me, and so I need you guys all to know that that's very important to me, is privacy, the integrity of clients' information, their stories, their everything. And when I talk about clients, like my new to Canada clients today, you know, every client's a story, and they're like my babies, and I'm just so proud of every single one of them, because it means they're getting onto the ladder. It means they're, you know, congratulations for starting your future. Because really, your home is, it's like a big piggy bank, right? So I'm lucky to get to do what I do.
I think this is too big.
You don't
for
need
my
this?
head. Yeah.
You want this?
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be great.
You don't want the Tony Robbins?
I couldn't figure it out. I didn't want to fumble with it in front of you guys. I got embarrassed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Ruth actually did my mortgage for me as well, so it's nice to hear that, you know, these aren't just people that we're talking to, but like I actually use Ruth and send most of my clients to Ruth as well. So, and I know you're probably thinking, you know, Paul, Jordin, you bought 20 years ago, so $13,000, great, but now we need X amount of dollars to buy, but I actually just bought 6 months ago, so it is definitely still possible within Toronto. And I'll tell you a little bit about my story. So I actually rented, I did the math today for myself. I rented for the last 12 years. So 12 years, I always shared my property with roommates. So I didn't pay, you know, $2,000 in rent, but over 12 years, I spent $150,000 on rent going to someone else's ownership, equity, all of that, and I will see none of it for the rest of my life. So I decided that it was the right time for me. I'm a realtor, and I better, you know, if I'm gonna talk the talk, then I better walk the walk. And so purchased with Ruth 6 months ago. I was really fortunate to be able to purchase with my family members, have their help with the down payment in that sense. So that made my process a little bit easier. But, you know, Ruth made a really good point, and it's all about talking about what is your plan for the future, right? Because if you get with the right professionals, knowing what your 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 10-year plan is, that's going to make a huge difference on not only the location, the type of property, and like Ruth said, the type of products you're going to purchase with when you go forward to do that. So definitely, I do believe in when is the right time to buy, and it's always yesterday. So especially now as we go through the process of buying with first-time home buyers, you're going to be competing out there, and I bet you a lot of people have already lost out on maybe 1, 2, 3 houses. So when they come to the table tomorrow, they're going to pay more than they would have yesterday. So that's kind of how that happens, and that's why we see the prices going up all the time. So it really is a great question to think about. I mean, we can say every day that it's always going to be yesterday is the right time to buy, but you have to really decide when the right time to buy for you is. So for me, for example, you know, 12 years ago, I probably didn't have enough down payment. I didn't have steady income. So it didn't make sense for me to buy. It really made sense for me to rent. And so that's why I did that at that time. Looking back on it, I wish I had purchased or, you know, asked for some help or, you know, even knew about co-ownership. But unfortunately, that was just some stuff that we weren't really talking about as much. But I think as the new generation comes forward and is trying to buy and it's a little bit harder, those are definitely conversations, and I do think it's the way of the future. So a few things that you definitely want to think about. Down payment, obviously super important. As Ruth mentioned, we can use 5% depending on the amount you're purchasing. So 5% and up for your down payment. Do you have steady income to carry the monthly payments? So your monthly payments are going to not only include your mortgage, but they're going to include, if you're buying a condo, you have your condo fees, you have maintenance, you have insurance, and you have property taxes. So all together, those are going to be some things that we're going to think about when thinking about our monthly payments. So a really great thing that I did with Ruth when I was purchasing is, because it's a condo, there are ratios involved. So obviously the higher your maintenance fees are, the less purchasing power you will have, because that comes into your whole monthly cost. So same with taxes. So that's why having Ruth or a mortgage broker there while you're going through with your clients making offers on property is so important. You might see a property that has, maintenance fees of $1,000. Well, what does that do to your affordability? If you can't get a hold of your bank and you just say, let's go in, no conditions, it's great, it's a perfect unit for me, and then you find out that all of a sudden your affordability has gone down because your maintenance fees are much higher or your property taxes are much higher, then you're going to be in a situation that you don't want to be in. So that's why having someone there to kind of walk you through the process as you're making offers, especially when having a financing condition is very hard, is super, super important. That's not to say that you can't have a financing condition ever, but if you are competing, it's going to be something that's a little bit harder to do. But again, having a mortgage broker there, for example, I had a client that bought a condo. It was a work to live building, so it needed 10% down, and there were only a few banks that would lend on this type of property. So when we went in to make our offer, even though we were competing against 3 other offers, we were able to bring this forward to the listing agent. As a listing agent, you always want to make sure your property will close on closing day. So if your client buying can't get financing, then that's of no interest to you. So we were actually able to get a financing condition on this because we did our background with our mortgage broker before making an offer. So those are the kind of things that you're going to want to look at before you're buying a property, especially when it comes to condos. There are types of properties that are blacklisted by certain mortgage lenders as well. And so someone like Ruth can help us through that process to make sure that we are fully informed before making an offer. I'm a big believer in still enjoying your life after you buy a property. So making sure that you're not putting all of your eggs in that one basket and not being able to, still live. I love to go out for dinner. I love to go shopping, and I wanted to make sure that when I purchased, I still had the ability to do that. So that's also something that I would like to talk about with my clients. And really, you could be pre-approved up to $900,000. But at the end of the day, if the monthly payments do not make sense for you to be able to still live your life, have your car payments, do your groceries, then I would probably advise against that as a professional, because the last thing I would want is for you to come back to me and say, hey, Carolyn, we bought that cool house, but now I can't afford to live. So that's really, at the end of the day, is my goal, is to make sure that you're not only getting into the market, but you're doing it in a way that makes sense for you. And then I kind of have this on here because I wanted to show you, that kind of example that I showed you about how much I've spent on rent in the last 12 years, and how your money can work for you. So that same 70% down or 70% after 3 years is going to work for you in a much different way. So really is, do you want to start building your own wealth and getting into that property ladder, as Paul mentioned, or do you want to pay someone else's for the rest of your life? So, yeah, pay someone else? I doubt it, Jude. So, you have options. Jordin and I were having a conversation about renting, and I just previously was renting. I paid $1,000 all in. I had a great place and a great location. I did live with roommates, but for me, that made sense at the time. It was $1,000. And you might think to yourself, the example that Ruth gave us, we saw a $2,600 a month for a mortgage. So if that doesn't make sense to you, but you have a down payment, can you buy a property and rent it? That allows you to get into the market while it's still affordable for you, have someone else pay your mortgage, you keep renting wherever you're renting, but at least your money is working for you, and then when you're ready to move in or you're ready to refinance and buy something else, then you're already in the market. So that's a really great option. Buying pre-construction is another great option. What's nice about pre-construction is you have some time to save up. It's at least 4 years when you buy into pre-construction. Usually has about $5,000 to $10,000 as your deposit, and then the structure, depending on the builder, usually it's about 5% every 30 days until you get up to the 20%. What's nice about that is you don't have to qualify right away for a mortgage, and then in 4 years, when you decide that you're ready and you want to move in, then you're ready to go and you're making hopefully a little bit more money, because that's how our life usually works. So pre-construction is definitely a great option. It's good to know what's going on in the city if you'd like to have that option. The earlier you get in, the less you will pay for your pre-construction. So your VIP, your platinum areas, which we can get into in a lot of detail if that's a route you want to go, is going to be when you're going to want to buy, because that's going to be the cheapest option for you. And then co-ownership, we went into kind of detail about. Vinitha on our team also purchased a co-ownership with Ruth and Paul. So definitely something to talk about. I'd like to say that I have a co-ownership with my parents, sort of, in a way. But we all know each other's finances, so that one's a little bit easier. But definitely an option. My parents don't live with me. They don't pay the bills. So they were just kind of there on title. I also am self-employed. So self-employed mortgages, obviously a little bit harder to navigate than someone who has a regular T4. So that's a great question for Ruth if you are self-employed, getting pre-approved in that way. So that's another thing if you are in need, just like maybe someone to bump up your pre-approval so you can get what you want in the city. So what are the benefits of being a first-time home buyer? We have a few different programs that can help you, achieve those goals. So one of them is your first-time home buyer's land transfer tax. So on any property, you are going to be paying a land transfer tax. The how much depends on how much you're paying for the property. In Toronto, we actually pay it again, so we pay twice. So you're paying land transfer tax to Ontario and then also to Toronto. So Ontario gives you a rebate of $4,000 if you're a first-time home buyer. Toronto gives you a rebate of $44.75. So that makes your total rebate of $84.75. So that would be your first-time home buyer's land transfer tax rebate. If you are buying with someone who is not a first-time home buyer, like I did, for example, that's something that when we decided how much ownership we had on title, if that made sense for us to do a third, because 2/3 of that would not get a rebate and only my 1/3 got the rebate. So that was something that we had to think about as well when it came down to speaking with our lawyer and getting that rebate. So that's something to keep in mind. If you are buying with someone who is not a first-time home buyer, you will get the percentage of the rebate that you own the property. So that's something to note. Your first-time home buyer's tax credit, this is definitely going to be one that you're going to talk to your accountant about, but basically for your income tax, you can get a tax credit as a first-time home buyer. It's up to $5,000 and it all depends on your income. So something to take advantage of as well when you do become a first-time home buyer. And then the ability to use your RSP as a down payment. This one is a little bit tricky because, I don't know, we had some trouble with that. I didn't end up using mine. But it's up to $35,000 that you can use. And once you take it out,
So the rule
yes.
is if you're putting money into your RSPs, the money has to be inside of the RSPs for 90 days before you can take it out. If you close your property and you still want to take it out because your 90 days lapsed after closing date, you have to have it out by 30 days post-closing. So it's a little bit of a tricky timeline. It takes a couple business days to remove as well, so keep that in mind when you're trying to move money around. And I can't remember what the issue we had.
Yeah, with ours it was that I was going to put some in, but then there wasn't enough time for us to get it out. So that is definitely something to think about as well if you are going to be using it. And for us, because I was having help with my down payment, having that money put in through the RSP and then taking it out, it just didn't work timeline-wise. So, so that's something to keep in mind as well. It's not as, you can't just take it out and have it, you know, ready to go. Another thing that I like to mention as soon as we start the process of buying is you will need a deposit to make an offer on a home. Usually it's about 5% of the purchase price. As Ruth mentioned, it does go towards your down payment, but it basically acts in good faith when we are making an offer. That money needs to be out and available once we start shopping, because we'll need to be putting a bank draft together, basically, and you'll need to get it to the owner or the seller or the real estate agent that's listing within 24 hours of an accepted offer. So once we start shopping, if your monies are in investments or in RSPs, that's something that I always like to mention. Another thing is if you bank with Simply, Tangerine, anything that is an online institution, it might be a good idea to open a bank account with an actual physical brick and mortar building, because getting a bank draft for that process is a nightmare. Just throwing that out there.
3 to 5 business days.
Yeah.
Your money is not going to move very quickly.
Yeah.
So that's why give me all the information and I will be like, oh, I see that you bank with Simply. This could be an issue.
No fees, but it comes with some consequences once it comes down to it. Especially if you're making, you know, I try and keep my clients in making 3 offers and then we get them something. If you're making 4, 5 plus offers, each time you need to re-deposit that back into your online banking. It's a whole thing. So if you do bank with an online institution, I would suggest once you start, you know, getting into the process, that we maybe think about having you at least that money for now, opening an account that you can have and pick up a bank draft really simply, because it honestly makes such a huge difference. It will be way less stressful, and I like to say that we're here to make your life less stressful through this process. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the process. Oh, Jude, sorry. Yeah. Yes, land transfer tax.
Toronto or
Just Toronto.
just Toronto?
Yeah, that I'm aware of in Ontario, yeah. Yeah, so if you're buying in Mississauga, and that might be something that, you know, kind of deters you from buying in the city or not, but yeah, we do pay more tax in Toronto.
And you cannot mortgage that. It's
Yes.
part of your closing costs.
Yes,
So you gotta be
it has to be
prepared.
cash in hand.
Review those numbers.
I would say when you're considering that, though, also considering if you're doing that in Mississauga versus downtown, and that Mississauga has a higher
Land, they have a higher
mill rate. So
Yeah.
you pay much higher
property tax
property taxes. So
year over year. Yeah.
Did you have a question?
Oh, yes. So is there any support from government for, like, first-time buyer?
Sorry, say that again?
Like, a support, like, from government?
There are different programs that they have in place. Depending on how you qualify, it's going to depend on your income. I know they put in it was basically a program to support buyers, but the income versus what you could actually buy for that amount made it extremely hard to use. It doesn't work in Toronto.
The math doesn't work in Toronto, and it's a shared plan where the government is essentially owning 5% of your property. So you put in 5%, they put in 5% if you qualify, right? And then that means they have 5% of your equity as well as you move forward. So the math doesn't work for Toronto. It just
I think probably anywhere in the GTA. Like you were allowed to buy up to, I think it was 500, and it was 4 times your income up to 120,000 income. So it made it kind of like, what are you buying for 500,000? Really, you just can't in the city.
First-time home buyers, they have a program, and then you can go online. There's a calculator. Put in your income, put in your down payment, fill it in, press done, and it'll spit out maximum purchase price. Okay.
And then we can talk about what you can buy with that purchase price. If you're interested in buying a studio, maybe it could work. But yeah, it just depends on what you're looking. And you said you're in a townhome now, so going to a studio, I don't know. Yeah, so definitely, but there are programs out there, you know, that we can talk about, especially if you're looking to do some improvements on your home. There's a Purchase Plus Improvements program. So there are definitely programs for you to assist you. But in terms of like a down payment program, that one they put out there, and it unfortunately for our market, anywhere in the GTA, especially after COVID, it just won't work. Maybe in Hamilton pre-COVID, but unfortunately not anymore. So yeah. Any other questions? I forgot to ask. Yeah.
About saving that initial down payment, what are the disadvantages of taking a credit line? Or does that not? Like,
Good question. It's a great question. So, like you're saying, what if I have a $30,000 unsecured line of credit?
Yeah.
So the second you draw that,
credit score?
The bank has to use, you have to pay it back, right? The bank uses a 3% payback on that 30,000. So that's a $900 payment. A $900 payment takes away $400,000 in, it can be done, but you have to be able to put it into your liabilities. Okay? Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, I just wanted to. I thought that it didn't make sense eventually. That's why no one does it anyway.
It ultimately brings your purchasing power down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like people to not touch
do
their
that.
lines of credit.
Yeah.
So how do your parents do? I'm kidding.
Get a gift. Get a gift.
Kidding, not kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the only way for me. Yeah, probably.
Well, we can chat.
Yeah.
we should.
I don't like only.
Oh.
The only way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have a line of credit, but I use it for things after my purchase. You know, I did some renos in my condo, and they're not cheap. So we had a seminar about that before this one, but
It's good
yeah.
Zero balance. Perfect. Yeah. But go get one. Absolutely go get one. It's a good emergency
Yeah.
piece for you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, perfect. So I guess the reason we're here today is to select your team of Inner Circle. So having someone on your team, obviously, including your realtors, your mortgage advisor, your lawyers, an architect if you're going to do renos, an accountant, like we spoke about, having an accountant is super important, financial planner, handy person, having all of those people ready to go as you start the process is more important than you know. And we like to work with people that we know. Jordin and I were talking about this earlier, because if things do go sideways, which hopefully they don't, but sometimes they do, having someone that I can communicate with while it's going on, that we can stay in touch with, and I know those lines of communications are open, it will make your life so much easier. The amount of times Ruth has called me and said, hey, nothing's wrong, but it's taking a little bit longer. I just wanted you to know so that you don't think that we've dropped the ball or whatever. Then that keeps me in the know, and it keeps my client happy at the end of the day, because we are all in touch, and it's not like, well, I have no idea. So I think that's really, really important, and lawyers as well. Lawyers are great, but you really only get to know what they do when things go sideways. So you want a lawyer that goes to bat for you and makes sure that that deal gets closed, because that would be the worst thing at the 11th hour, to have a lawyer that couldn't get that done for you. So once you've kind of chosen your realtor or your mortgage advisor, getting the pre-approval is the first step. I won't go out with clients unless they have their pre-approval done. It doesn't make sense. We could be looking all day at homes, but if you can't afford the homes and you fall in love with something, then unfortunately that kind of makes our job a little bit harder to, kind of bring you back down to earth. So definitely getting that pre-approval started and done is the most important thing. And if you do find something that is well within your wheelhouse and there's an offer date and we're not ready, well, then you're going to lose out on that property, unfortunately. So definitely getting that going is the most important. Also, we talked about the deposit briefly, so making sure that those funds are available so that when we do start shopping, we are comfortable making that deposit. And then we'll talk about closing costs, how much that land transfer tax is, and your ongoing cost of maintaining the home, so that you have a really great plan going forward. I really love the question, what is your 5-year, 10-year plan? I think if a if a mortgage professional and a realtor don't ask you those questions, then they probably aren't going to do the best job for you. Unfortunately, you can hire anyone can open a door, but our job is to really educate you through the process, and that's why I love working with first-time home buyers, because we get a chance to do that. So next, we're going to start looking at properties. That is really the fun part. So we're going to look at listings. We're going to find neighborhoods that work. If school systems are really important to you, we're going to talk about that. Transit. Do you have a car? Do you need parking? What are the amenities around you in your neighborhood? Those are all going to be important things moving forward when choosing exactly what property we're going to get for you. And those things change. So I always like to say to people, remain flexible, because they will change throughout our process. You might think that you need 3 bedrooms, but realizing that if you have a bonus space in the basement that works for you in that way, it can work. So those things are going to change, and we do have to stay flexible, but I'm here to hold you accountable. A lot of people love walking into a home that's fully staged and it's beautiful, but we have to keep in mind all of the things that are on our must-have instead of just kind of going full force because it looks pretty. So deciding on the type of property is also a really big step in this process. So, I connected with Paul actually because I had a client that was looking for a house with laneway potential. There are a ton of rules around what houses have laneway potential, and unfortunately, every realtor puts laneway potential on the listing when it might not be. So I said to my client straight up, I don't know. I honestly don't have the knowledge, but I know someone who does. Actually, Ruth connected us. And that's why I'm here today, because working with people like Jordin and Paul, and they have that knowledge going forward, so that if you are trying to buy a condo, I'm your girl. If you're trying to buy something with income potential, then you'll probably work with Paul or Jordin. So having someone on your team and working with a team that has a wealth of knowledge is so, so important. My most important job for you throughout this process really is to negotiate your deal. So my job as the buyer agent is to save you the most amount of money. The job of the listing agent is to get the seller the most amount of money. So if you think about it, then we have a little bit of a gap there. So that's where I come in handy, because I have taken courses on negotiating, and really negotiating the deal to make sure that it's weighted in your best interest is going to be the most important thing. Having the closing date that you need, those terms and conditions that we talked about briefly, the financing condition, why that exists. So I'll walk you through that. Your home inspection condition and your status certificate condition are the 3 big ones that we'll have going forward. Some you don't need for all of them, like your condo, you're going to need that status certificate, and a house, you won't have it. So making sure that those are weighted in your best interest and are protecting you as the buyer are going to be really important. Once we find a property and we negotiate a successful deal, we have all of our pre-closing considerations. We have some revisits. You're going to meet with your lawyers. Your mortgage broker and your lawyer behind the scenes are going to be doing all the dirty work for you, and you get to kind of sit back and relax. And then you're getting your keys on closing. So that is, in a nutshell, the process. Do you guys have any questions about that? I mean, obviously, as you go through, there's always more questions that come up. But yeah, that's it in kind of broad strokes. No questions? Love it. So yeah, we've talked a little bit about kind of every aspect of the process. And buying a home is an adventure, and it won't be stress-free. I can guarantee it. But we are here to help you and make sure that as much stress is off your plate as possible, making sure that you're introduced to the right professionals from start to finish, even after you take possession of your home. And I think all 3 of us work together because we are really here for you guys. We're not here to just get a paycheck. I love my clients, we love our clients, and we want to help them see through the entire process. Try and make it fun. Yeah. That's all. Any questions for anyone who is speaking today?
I have another question.
Yeah, please.
So I'm actually I'm on a work permit right now, and I've applied for my permanent residency. So how does that play into mortgages and even buying? And I have heard there are special taxes on that, but which get returned after the first year.
Yes. So there's a type of lending for someone that does not have PR as yet,
Yeah.
and they still have a work permit. And there's certain rules around that. I.e., you gotta have your work permit valid for 6 months post-closing, so that's one of the big ones. They still look at you as, what's your experience, how much are you making? Lender's still gonna look at your job in itself. You're talking about the non-res sales tax, right?
I'm not sure.
Okay. So, as part of closing costs, there's something called non-res sales tax. It's 15% of the purchase price, and you're gonna pay that at closing. So, on top of land transfer tax and closing costs, you're also gonna have this
15%.
non-res, yes. Once you get your PR, yes, you can send that in for a rebate. What I don't know 100% is that if it's 100% rebate or if it's like 98% rebate. Okay, so that's definitely a lawyer question, and it has everything to do with your timing.
Okay.
That's a big decision for you, right? Because it's a large chunk of dollars. Do I get into the market today? Do I have the funds to be able to do that? Or are you waiting for the battle of getting your PR, right? Yeah, we can definitely chat about that, and you can prepare for one type of lending, and then what does it look like as soon as you get that PR, right? Because you totally shift into something else.
No, I mean, the plan is to kind of collect till I get the PR.
Yeah.
But then, obviously, there's a possibility that we have a conversation.
Yeah, 15% is a big number. Yeah, no, I get your pain.
Yeah, that's definitely something to consider. And I think like you said, you talk to clients, 2 years before sometimes they're ready to buy. So it's coming up with a plan. I even talk to clients 2 years before they're ready to buy, and it's talking about what are the options now, tomorrow, the next day, and really coming up with a plan that's going to suit your needs. It's not one size fits all. So definitely some good questions to ask.
That 15% too is also weighted to what your percentage on title is. So if you're in a co-ownership with a Canadian, then that 15% is going to be based on your percentage of title of the property.
Oh, so if I'm like a 50% owner, then I only have to pay 15% on the 50%.
Correct.
If you're 1% owner, you don't have to pay 50%.
How much do you love that and trust that co-ownership person, right?
Before you love them.
Yeah, but you can see how it's definitely not one size fits all. And I was going to touch on, the pre-approvals that you get from, online, and it spits out you've been pre-approved. Please don't use those. Please don't use those. You're more pre-approved in a 15-minute conversation with me, I guarantee you, than that piece of paper. And then by the time my application process is done and I've run credit and I've looked at your pay stubs and all of that, verbally, you're more pre-approved than any of those pieces of paper. So please be very, very cautious what you go online and what spits out at the end of the day. Okay?
Yeah, and I mean, I've had clients ask for pre-approval letters, and you've told me time and time again, like, it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't. And sometimes the seller will want to see it, and that's fine. We can do that. We'll do it.
I'll do it.
But at the end of the day, your pre-approval exists for you, but your actual approval exists for you and the property that you buy together, right? So it's not, you get $1 million no matter what. It's if the house is worth that much, which is, where my job becomes very important when we are going into negotiations and deciding what price we want to pay on a property, we're going to look at comparables. Because if you decide to offer, 1.2 on a house that's worth $900,000, even if you're approved up to 1.2, the bank is going to say, too bad. The house is not worth that much, and they have it as collateral. So they want to make sure if you default on your mortgage, then they're going to be able to get the amount that they lent. So that's why that pre-approval letter, it's a nice to have, and if someone wants it, I'm like, sure, we'll make it for you. But at the end of the day, it comes down to all of the factors combined, including the house. So.
And you can overpay for a property. That's okay. If you really want the property, no problem. But let's just talk about what that's going to look like on paper. So for your example, the bank is only going to lend on the $900,000, but if you have the extra $300,000 to cover the difference, no problem. Buy the house, pay whatever you want for it, right? But we definitely want to have that conversation.
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
I heard like the bidding thing is gonna change. Is that true? Like you can see how much each person
We
increases.
talked about it.
Yeah.
They talked about having no blind bidding, and I mean nothing's been put into place, but we'll see. I think that they're thinking that it will help with people overpaying and bidding over and above what anyone else is, because an agent can say to you, I have 3 offers, you're not the top offer, so what do you want to improve with, without having anything.
Yeah.
You could be the top offer. They can tell you whatever they want, so it just makes it a little bit more transparent for sure. And that all goes into what the relationship you have with the listing agent, and that's a whole thing.
It's not certain that this will get
Correct.
implemented as a rule, or like I don't
No.
know.
No.
But it's
federal and
it's a government thing.
Yeah. Is it federal that they're doing that at the federal
well,
level?
they promise it federally, but it's provincially
It's-
controlled. So.
Yeah, the housing market is
And
provincially
we know we're
controlled.
up for it and or Doug for it.
Yeah, I
Doug
always
Ford
get them
and
mixed up.
Trudeau get along really well. And they
Yeah.
kick each other out and.
Yeah. I think the thing about price is that it's subjective. So market value, not market value, but the value of a home is whatever someone will pay for it. So, when we're talking about what people will pay for something, it's like if you have gone out 10 times and you have made 10 offers and you've lost out on 10 offers versus someone who's on their first offer, that threshold of where they're going to go with their price is going to be gravely different. And similarly, if you have someone who, okay, my grandma lives on this street, so I need this house because I need free childcare. My threshold is going to be a lot higher than someone else who's just like, yeah, I like the house, but I could live anywhere. So that's when it becomes tricky, but I always ask my clients to come up with a number that they would feel comfortable losing it at. If the house went for this much above and we're still within that market value because we've looked at comparables, you're okay with walking away. That's really what it comes to. Because
and the truth is, you're probably not going to get your first offer, right? Like it usually takes 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get lucky, but.
I've done it for a few people, yeah.
Yeah. Me too, but.
Yeah. First house they saw, first offer.
Yeah.
Twice actually I've done that. So it happens, but
It's rare.
it's very rare, yeah. And people want to look around. Yeah. So yeah. Cool. Amazing. Well, thank you guys for coming. Yeah, we'll be around if you guys have any questions after the fact that you want to just kind of bounce off of us. We're always here.